So let's take a look at a parts lookup that might be a little more complicated. So let me put in a serial here. So I'll do a 6YZ prefix, which is for a D8R Series 2 that was built in the early 2000s. 00373. Okay, so just like I said before, go ahead and once you have your serial in, click navigate. So I'm going to try to look up the transmission. I'm going to look up for the planetary group for the transmission for this D8R Series 2. So like I said before, you might want to jump into, when you first jump into a machine, when you first go into the machine, you're doing a parts lookup, have a look at your as shipped product here on your configuration page. And in this example, we're looking for a transmission. So all of these links here, these that are in blue, and when I hover over them, they underline, and then it's the hand cursor, means it's a subgroup that I can click into. So in that case, I'm looking for either a transmission arrangement or a powertrain arrangement that's being called out on its own. I don't see one. What I do see, though, is a transmission serial for this machine. So in this case, it's the transmission serial is 6GY00919. So that could be important. There might be a couple different transmission groups that pop up under my systems and components. And what might tell me the correct one for this machine is that serial number. Okay, sometimes you'll see that with the engine as well when you're looking for components for the engine. Sometimes they'll break down which one you should pick on your engine serial. They'll do a serial break. So again, I'm looking for the planetary group for this transmission. So I'll come over here to the left, systems and components. Let's go under powertrain arrangement. So the reason I came over systems and components is, again, I didn't really see a powertrain arrangement or a transmission arrangement jumping out at me in as shipped. So the next easiest thing to do would be to come over to systems and components. I open up the powertrain group here, and I'll scroll down to my transmission group. So when I open my transmission group, you might have several options. Okay, so I have a bearing group, I have a kit for the transmission bearings, I have a mounting group for the transmission, which would basically be the hardware to mount the transmission. And then I have two transmission arrangements. So notice here, I do have a serial break. So I have 6GY1 all the way to 99,999, and then a transmission arrangement for a transmission serial of HRC1 to 99,999. So there's my serial break. So what was my transmission serial again? Transmission and driveline 6GY919. So my transmission arrangement group must be this 1640234 because of that serial number break. So I'll go ahead and click on that. And then there's the breakdown for the different parts of that transmission. There's the case and parts, there's the control group for the transmission, there's my transfer gear, my bevel and transfer gear, my drop box essentially, and then there is my planetary group transmission. So when I click on that, again, it gives me two. For some reason, there's another serial break. It's the same group number, but there's another serial break. Remember, my transmission serial was 6GY919. So I'm going to go with this prefix because we don't have an HRC prefix for our transmission. So I'm going to click on this one. And then there's the breakdown of the planetary for my transmission. Now, the other thing I want you to watch out for under this is this breakdown actually goes on to 2 pages. So I have my first consist here, my first graphic here, and a really like one single long graphic. As I scroll through this, you'll see there's 103 different parts, but there's 2 different pictures. In SYS, in WebSys, what you had is as you scroll down, it would scroll into a new picture. Well, now what you have is you just have to hit the over arrow, and it'll put it onto 2 different pictures. So the nice thing that SYS 2.0 will do, so you don't have to keep scrolling back and forth. Sometimes the pictures can be real long. It could be 5 pictures for one group, and you're trying to connect, maybe a shaft to a hub or something, and they're on 2 different pictures. So what you can do is, if you want to kind of look at them without having to scroll back and forth, if you're working with 2 screens, what you can do is this little box with the arrows sticking out of it, what that will do is open this picture in a new tab. So I can look at them. If I'm working with 2 screens here, I can look by opening onto a new tab. So now I have two different tabs open. You can see my screen here. So I can move this screen over to another screen, or even print that out and have that on my desk and compare two pictures at the same time. So just be careful with that. Sometimes if the part you're not looking for, it's not in that consist, it might be on multiple pictures. And then again, to view multiple pictures at the same time, you can just bump that out to another tab. That's what that does. So again, with anything, this was the same way in SysWeb. You had multiple pictures. You really have to be careful with serial number breaks. So you have a couple different serials to pay attention to. You have the overall machine serial number. You might have an engine serial, and for machines that have transmissions, like bulldozers, rock trucks, backhoes, loaders, there might be a transmission serial break. So just pay attention to that, and that information, again, can be found right on your ASHIP product. In SYS 2.0, CAT has integrated something called the warning toggle. So you'll see warning messages as you do a basic parts lookup. What that is telling you is if you see a yellow exclamation point next to a group, that part may not be on the as shipped invoice, or that group was added after the actual build date of the machine. So let's take a look at what that might look like. So let me put in a serial number, and I'll click navigate to go into the machine. So let's go down to the powertrain group of this machine, and I'll open up the transmission group. So as you can see under the transmission, I have 4 of those exclamation points. They kind of looks like a yield sign with a white exclamation point in the middle of it. What that's basically telling you is it's going to list all of the transmission groups that might be associated with this loader, a 966G with an AXJ prefix, but not your serial number specifically. So sometimes what SYS does is it'll look at a build date range or even a serial number range, and will include all of the possibilities that could have been included in that either build date or serial number range. So what that warning toggle does is it lets you know, it's like, hey, these are all the ones that could have come with this machine, but your specific machine, these ones don't show up anywhere on an as shipped invoice for that machine when it left the factory, or these are outside of maybe a build range. So what you can do is if you don't want to see these ones and you want to just kind of narrow down, well, let me take a look at something that was part of a group in the as shipped invoice, I can turn that toggle off. And you see that up here. It's default. By default, it's always turned on. So if I turn it off, I just narrowed this down to 2. So I have the actual transmission group that would have invoiced with my machine. And then I have, there's a cover group for the oil filter. It's just your fill cap essentially. So those are the 2 to narrow down your groups. Sometimes what you'll have with older machines is the as shipped invoice, it didn't come over very well onto WebSys. So if you don't get any results, but you know there's a, in this case, you know there's a transmission on the machine, and when you turn off your toggle, they all go away, or there's no possibilities at all under this group, maybe turn that toggle on and then just have a look. There might be notes that help you narrow down which is the correct one for your machine. Let's take a look at another way to narrow down search results for parts breakdowns, and that's going to be in the configuration arrangement for the machine. So let me put in a serial number for a 980H. I'll click navigate to go into the machine. Okay, so let me scroll down to the powertrain, and I'm going to come down to the transmission group. So again, I'm in product structure on this side, systems components product structure. So you can see under my transmission, I have a bunch of different results. I have different arrangements, I have different mounting groups, all kinds of different things. So the reason I have so many results for this machine, even though I put in a whole serial number, what systems components is doing is even though I put in a whole serial number, it's still looking at a build date range, or a serial number range, or even just a common prefix. So there's a lot of different configurations and that are available for different machines, different prefixes, and that were available during different build date ranges. So what you want to do is possibly narrow down to your specific machine if you're using product structure or systems components to look up your parts. So what Sys is going to do as a default is all the configurations that are available for that machine or were available for that machine at the time it was manufactured. You can see on this dropdown, it's going to include all configurations under your systems and components. It's not going to narrow it down necessarily by your serial number. Now, there's ways you can narrow that down. So one way to do that is through your all configurations. So if I hit this dropdown, not every machine is going to be like this, but sometimes loaders are going to be like this, excavators, dozers are going to be like this. So by default, it's going to pick all configurations. So you can see the different configurations that were available for a 980H with a JMX prefix. So there was a steel mill arrangement, there was a waste handling arrangement, there's an industrial arrangement and a logging arrangement. There's different configurations and arrangements that were available for this machine. So if your machine isn't any of those, if you just have a general earth moving arrangement for this specific machine, just find it's going to be there'll be one generalized arrangement in there. In this case, it's a 988H wheel loader with a JMS prefix, powered by a C15 engine. There's no special arrangement for this. So I can narrow down a lot of my results by picking a specific configuration. Now, if you do know that this is a waste handling arrangement from the factory, or if this was a steel mill arrangement, then you can pick that one. But if you want to narrow down, if it's none of those things, you can certainly narrow down your arrangement. So I picked the general earth moving one. So now when I go down to my transmission, you'll see that the list it's shrunk down significantly. So I still have a couple extra possibilities that are identified by this warning label here. So you might see kits that have those warning labels, again, because kits aren't going to be invoiced from the factory. And then what this warning notification is telling you is, hey, this group number was not invoiced with this machine. So it makes sense that the kits have that warning label. But if you want to clean up your results a little bit, you can toggle off that warning indicator up top here. So now I've shrunk it down. So if you look at, if I'm looking for the transmission breakdown, just by reading the group numbers, let me expand this. The support group is basically your mounting group. The cover, the oil filler cap, so that's your filler cover, that's the security cover. And then I'm down to two different possibilities for my transmission. And if you read the notes right here, your brake is by your transmission serial number. So if you know your transmission serial number, it should be right on the transmission itself on the machine. If it's a DGZ prefix, you'll go with this one. If it's an REB prefix for your transmission, you'll go with this one. So it's a very easy way to clean up your results by selecting a specific configuration and then turning off your warning toggles to really zero in on the correct option for your machine. So let's try a scenario where we differentiate our parts results by notes instead of a serial number break. So let's try to find the starter for this 330C with a long undercarriage. Okay, so again, click navigate, and if you hit enter, it's not a big deal. Just find the product configuration at the top. All right, so I click navigate, brought me to the configuration page. Excellent. So we're looking for the starter for this machine. If I look at my as shipped first, you might see something in here that could be that could contain a starter for you. In this case, there's something that's close, starting arrangement, cold weather. And that's right in my as shipped product. So actually, that's a good scenario. Let's click on that. If I click into that, and right there, it calls out a special starting motor based on the configuration of this machine. So that's a scenario where you can use as shipped to find the starter because it's a special arrangement or a special configuration that was put in this machine at the factory. All right, so let's say we didn't go that way. We went through systems and components. And I went through electrical and starting system. And I scroll down to my starting motor group. And I have three different options. I have a group that's 1802435, a 1970986, and a 5909161. So if I didn't know right off the bat the way we did it in as shipped and I was going to try to work it through this way, you can. Um, there's not always going to be notes right here for you or a serial number break. It doesn't mean there aren't notes that can't help you. So what CAT did when they designed SIS 2.0 is they tried to make this as clean as possible, this look, so it wasn't too messy. So there's minimal information on the left here, but you can still read these notes. So I select one, and there's usually group notes at the top of the consist that I want you to pay attention to. So this first one I click, we're going to do what we call work our way backwards. So this first one I pick, is there something I can click up here on this group that I can work backwards to something that might be in product configuration, or my as shipped product is another name to call that. So in this case, this starter is part of that starting arrangement cold weather. This one is part of an engine arrangement. So we don't necessarily have this engine arrangement, but this is where that starter is a part of. So I can click on any of these and work my way backwards to maybe an engine arrangement for this machine. So the third one is actually a field. You might see this from time to time. So it says in your notes, this group number is the field replacement for a 338-3454. So if it turns out the as shipped starter for this machine was a 338-3454, there may be no availability on that part where you'd have to buy the 590-9161. That's the field replacement, or like kind of the after it leaves the factory option for a starter in the field. And in that case, that's what you would be dealing with. You already own the machine. It's the field replacement because the machine's out in the field. All right, so let's narrow down between these two. Like we saw before, starting arrangement, cold weather. So if I click on any of these, that higher level, it'll bring me to that part in product configuration. It'll bring me to that group in product configuration. And I have this green box here. It's basically telling me found in product configuration. So in that case, this is in that as shipped configuration page, where this is a special arrangement. So it's going to use this starter to fit with that special arrangement. Okay, the other option I had was this one, and it gave me two different engine arrangements. So let's see if we have that engine arrangement. Let me click on that first one. Okay, no, that wasn't really called out for us. That's usually something, that engine arrangement will be called out, usually in as shipped products. So that 1905836 I don't see. And let's try the other one. So this is a different engine arrangement. So if I go back to as shipped product, so just note that other option was part of an engine arrangement. And the two that they gave us, our machine didn't have those engine arrangements in that starter's higher level. So I could just see, well, let me go into the engine arrangement for this machine. And I'll look to see, it should all be alphabetical. I'll see if there's a starting group, starting motor. There's a starting aid that's different, but I don't see a starter in here. So when I go back to my electrical starting system, find my starter, this is the only one that I could work backwards to something that was found in my as shipped product. So this is the one I'm going to go with. Okay, so like we saw before, we're going to buy that 338-3454, or when I click the alternate, is there a reman option? That's normally what we're going to have in stock at Milton CAT. If there is a reman option, that's normally the one we're going to keep in stock at one of our branches. So I'll probably order this 10R9815 as the reman option. And I found that, again, by reading my notes. You can go through your product structure over here, and if you're offered multiple options, look for either a serial number break or read your notes. Your notes a lot of times will lead you down the right path, and you can work your way backwards to higher levels, all the way up to something that was found in product configuration to make sure you're picking the correct component that was shipped with this machine from the factory.